So the psychosexual evaluations that so-called practitioners use as a diagnostic tool, supposedly, for the development of a treatment program of those who have been accused credibly or otherwise and convicted of a sex offense, are very similar to the sex stings that police conduct online. Let me explain. So online, what police will do is, as we've delivered now through several different media, from Uncage Us, Citizens Against Government Entrapment, Caught in the Web, Just Played, ICAC Unpacked, and Stinging Back, all talking about these issues, exposes one theme running through it, which is that police manipulate circumstances to create a narrative that isn't necessarily so. And they do it very skillfully. They go to actual training camps run out of the university, I guess it's the community college system, up near Appleton, Wisconsin. They have an entire academy that works this out. And they tell the public that what they do is they get keen on the most technological advances that are out there that are being used by the so-called bad guys. But what they actually do is they also practice scripts and other sorts of things that they have learned will entrap people, regardless of whether those people have indicated an interest in having sex with minors or not. And they have several different scripts, some of which are designed for the unwary innocent, as the court has found, using their term unwary innocent, in, I believe, the Jacobson v. U.S. case of, I think, 1992, which clearly indicated entrapment. Or they do it for those who might actually have been a lead of theirs. But very rarely do they do the leads, the reactive stings. They do the proactive. And because of that, the proactive stings require you to manipulate context in order to create a narrative that wasn't there. As I've said many times, what if police just hung out there to see what would happen? Well, their argument to protect themselves and to cover up their crime is to say, well, the terrible things would happen toward minors. But they're deploying decoys. So, nothing would have happened to a minor because there's no minor at risk, because they're not investigating an actual crime. They're trolling. And secondly, that's great assumption on their part, that if they had just left it alone, what might have happened? Well, what do the psychosexual evaluations have? They do the exact same thing. They take what you say from your narrative, which is innocent, say your childhood narrative, and they weave that into the basis of nascent criminality, judging from, or measuring from when you're a very small child. So let me explain some of the things that they will do. So if they will ask you something innocuous. The clinician will say, well, tell me about your childhood. Was it a normal childhood? Set up question. So you go through and you say, like I did, well, you grew up on a farm, and and you didn't have too many friends because you grew up in a town of 824, and you didn't have a lot of close friends. You also have a character that says that not everybody is your friend. You really appreciate very close personal friends, and that becomes your asocial or antisocial. All right? They never mention the part about growing up in a small community. That's excised from the report. Similarly, if you have a child and you bounce the child on your knee and play, that became inappropriate contact with a child, right? Again, going back to the farm, if you have a bunch of boys who would do sort of the polar challenge of jumping into the icy cold river when you're 12 years old or 13 years old to see who's tough enough to stay in there the longest when the ice breaks, well, that obviously shows that you like exhibitionism. And the list goes on, okay? If you're a grandmother and you have a picture of your grandchild, on the mantle sitting in a tub, or you like to bathe your grandbabies, that turns into a perversion. Okay? If you have a healthy interest in adult pornography, if you want to call that healthy, certainly it's not it's not something that's unhealthy. It doesn't have to do with children. That is twisted around into some kind of interest in harming women. And of course, they start with objectifying women and they go on. And this is, of course, something that they do on a regular basis, but that doesn't matter. Then they go further when they get into the treatment program. They have you do things like a masturbation journal, where you have to, now these are sick puppies, you have to tell them why you did this, okay? What you were thinking about each time. Because, of course, that indicates prurience. Even though there's some significant research which says even if you are a pedophile, even if you have had only thoughts of sex with children, that if you confine yourself to erotica, there is no sure indication that you would go out and hurt children. In fact, that seems to be a mitigating influence that keeps your impulses in check. That, of course, is missing from their report that they provide to the police and to the treatment providers, to the probation officers, to the court. So you have to understand that there is a pattern here, and that everybody has, far from being a conspiracy, has a stake in the game. And it is a game. It's not about justice. It's not about truth, certainly. It's not about fair play. How can it be when the entire process is governed by vendors with their own interests, governed by a initiative at the governmental level to go after certain groups, governed by laws which are treated as if they come from on high, when in fact a law can be changed as easily, and the perception change after it as easily. Remember, blacks were at one point, what was it, 2/5 of a person? And most like-minded people today, who are decent-minded rather, don't believe that anymore. So to say, well, the law says, really isn't a compelling argument when we're talking about truth and integrity, and when we're talking about getting people who would really hurt children, of the Jacob Wetterling and Adam Walsh case, or the people who are systematically abusing them in homes, etc., in schools, in human trafficking cases, at the border, wherever there's chaos and opportunity. And those places are containing people who are not currently on the registry. So just to keep in mind, folks, that it is not at all what the average and ordinary person thinks. I know it is very tempting to say that this is easy to figure out and that there's very easy solutions and A plus B equals C, but that's not always the case. And it would be interesting to meet with some of these people who think so, to see if their everyday life works that way. I would love to follow them around and point out how seemingly innocent things were really not innocent at all. They would probably be very upset with that. And so you can understand how upsetting it is for people who are minding their own business, who are not doing something that would endanger a child, would be just horrified at what their own government is doing to them.